What if the thing that's been watching you was something you set free? When Robert Francis hiked into the ancient forests of Appalachia, he thought he was escaping the noise of the modern world. What he found was silence. Old, unnatural silence, hiding something far older than any map. A black stone buried in a forgotten cairn, a whisper in a language no one speaks anymore, and a shadow that doesn't stop once it starts falling. This isn't just a hike gone wrong. It's a story about curiosity, consequence, and the price you pay when you disturb the dead. You're never alone in the woods, especially when you steal from the dead. Robert Francis never believed in ghosts. Not really. Sure, he'd heard his share of Appalachian folklore and Native American burial myths during his work cataloging artifacts for the Franklin County Historical Museum, but they were just that. Stories. Fascinating, yes. Terrifying, occasionally, but always bound to the past, wrapped in dust and exaggeration. That's what he told himself again, sitting in the muted glow of a desk lamp, eyes scanning over a decades-old survey map of southern Illinois. His finger traced a faded red line through Shawnee National Forest. The town of Raventon marked the last semblance of civilization, nestled against the expansive green that stretched into a web of uncharted paths, ravines, and ancient twisted trees. A week alone in that wilderness. Just him, his bike, and his tent. He needed this. It had been 11 months, 3 weeks, and 4 days since his last day off. Too long. The creeping restlessness inside him, like moss gathering on stone, was beginning to crack through his carefully composed demeanor. So he'd submitted a time-off request, packed light, and chosen solitude over sleep and cell reception. At precisely 6:00 a.m., Robert boarded the first southbound train, bike slung over his shoulder, backpack securely fastened. A mist clung to the station platform in Raventon when he arrived. A quiet town, more trees than people, the kind of place where the diner still used handwritten menus and the post office was also the hardware store. He barely stopped to breathe it in before pedaling out toward the edge of the forest, where paved roads surrendered to gravel and then to packed dirt. As the sun climbed and the hours passed, the landscape changed. The friendly Midwest farmlands thinned and gave way to something older, more indifferent. Small hills became rocky outcrops. Open spaces narrowed into dense woods, trees looming like silent watchers. No cars, no power lines, just the low hum of insects and the rhythmic crunch of tires over earth. Robert felt it then, not fear, not quite, but a sense of being observed, as if the forest had paused to consider him. He reached his intended campsite by late afternoon, a small clearing partially enclosed by fallen logs and thick brush. Shielded from the wind but open to the southern sky. It was perfect. He pitched his tent quickly, efficient in the way only someone used to solitude could be. The fire pit came next, followed by the modest ring of stones he always constructed out of habit. Something primal about it, he supposed, like drawing a circle of safety. The woods surrounding the site were unusually quiet. Even the birdsong had dulled to a distant murmur. Later, as he scouted for firewood deeper into the brush, he stumbled upon something strange. It wasn't just the silence, or the way the trees seemed to lean closer together in this part of the forest. It was the ground itself, flattened in an unnatural ring. The grass had withered into a dull brown halo. At its center stood a cluster of stones, dozens of them, piled without mortar but arranged deliberately. Each was roughly the size of a closed fist, some larger, some smaller, stacked with strange symmetry. The formation was about 3 feet wide, 6 feet long. The longer he looked at it, the more it resembled a grave. Robert squatted, brushing fallen leaves aside with the back of his hand. A couple of crushed beer cans lay scattered near the base, along with a weather-worn hoodie, half buried in dirt. Someone had been here before. College kids, maybe. Campers. The stone pile could have been a prank, a macabre joke, meant to startle future wanderers like himself. Still, something about the construction unnerved him. The stones were too uniform, the space too still. A faint breeze stirred, and he noticed the treetops didn't sway. Then he saw it. Nestled near the side of the pile, partially buried between two flat stones, was a black object. It caught the dim light like oil on water, gleaming despite the shade. Robert knelt, heart ticking faster now, not with fear, but fascination. With careful fingers, he loosened the surrounding stones and pried the object free. It was a stone, but not like the others. Smooth and triangular, it fit perfectly in his palm. Parts of its surface were worn down, as if held often. Along one edge, faint grooves curved inward, almost like tool marks. It wasn't just a stone, it was the head of a small axe, an old one, possibly ceremonial. Robert stood, turning it over in his hand. The weight was balanced, the shape refined. It wasn't Native American, not any tribe he knew of, and yet it radiated something unmistakable. Not power, not exactly, but purpose. "I'll have to show Alan this," he muttered, thinking of his old college friend, now a professor of archaeology. Alan would lose his mind over this. He tucked the stone into a side pocket of his backpack, careful not to wrap it. The surface felt cold, too cold. Back at the clearing, twilight had already begun to settle. The firewood was dry enough to catch, and within minutes, a modest fire flickered to life. Shadows danced along the forest floor as Robert cooked a basic meal, the warmth of the flames warding off the creeping chill that fell with dusk. But something was wrong. He could feel it in the way the shadows shifted. Too fast. In the way the smoke curled sideways, then upward, as if drawn by invisible fingers. In the quiet. That damn unnatural quiet. Robert turned, half expecting to see someone behind him. No one. Just the dark. Just trees. He sat back down and added another log to the fire. The stone in his backpack throbbed against his side. Or maybe that was just his imagination. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. Not just the forest. Him. The fire burned low, casting flickers of orange and red across the ring of trees. Robert sat cross-legged, sipping lukewarm instant coffee from his metal camp mug, the air around him damp and unusually still. It wasn't just nightfall that made the woods quiet. This was the kind of silence that crept under your skin. Too complete, too perfect. Even the nocturnal insects, usually a chorus by this hour, were absent. It was as if the forest had drawn a collective breath and was now holding it. Robert tried to shake off the unease. He was alone. That's what he wanted, wasn't it? A week without screens, responsibilities, or people. Just time to reset, recharge, and reconnect with the natural world. He set the cup aside and unzipped his pack, pulling out a worn, leather-bound notebook. A habit from college fieldwork. Documenting impressions, sketches, strange finds. He flipped to a blank page and began scribbling a rough sketch of the stone formation he'd found earlier. Its dimensions, alignment, and, of course, the triangular black object now resting inside his backpack once more. The act of drawing calmed him, gave things structure. And then he heard it. A soft shuffle, not distant, not quite close, just behind him. He froze. The pencil paused in his hand, mid-line. He listened. Heart thudding in his ears, nothing. He turned his head slowly. Still nothing. A breeze picked up, then strange, cold, and for a moment he thought he caught movement between two of the trees on the edge of the clearing. A figure? No, just the wind bending the branches. Robert glanced at his fire. The flames danced as usual, but the shadows, those weren't moving. Right. They flickered as though something stood between him and the light. Something not visible. Something that shouldn't be casting a shadow. He stood up, back tight, and moved slowly toward the fire pit. The hair on the back of his neck prickled. "You're overtired," he told himself. The ride, the hike, the drop in temperature, it's all it is. He threw another log onto the fire and watched the sparks rise, trying to ground himself in something real, tangible. He breathed deeply, inhaling smoke and pine and the damp scent of the forest floor. But that feeling, being watched, remained. Eventually, he retreated to his tent, unzipped the flap and crawled inside. He didn't bother changing clothes, just pulled his sleeping bag around him and zipped it tight. The forest beyond his canvas wall stretched endlessly in every direction, a maze of old trees and older stories. He clicked off his headlamp. Darkness swallowed the tent, and silence returned. He lay there, eyes wide open, listening. Somewhere out in the trees, a low creak sounded, like a large branch shifting, or something heavier pressing down. Then, the whispering began. It wasn't words, not at first. More like the sound of wind through reeds, but thicker, more deliberate. A hush, then a murmur, then silence again. He sat up quickly, hand reaching for his flashlight. Before he could click it on, a soft thud echoed from outside the tent, like something, stepped on wet earth just a few feet from the entrance. He held his breath. Then, stillness. Long moments passed. Eventually, Robert flicked on the light. The tent's interior glowed with pale yellow. Everything was normal. His boots in the corner, the notebook, his water bottle, the shape of the backpack bulging near the flap where he'd stored it. Except, something was different. The pack's side pocket, where the black stone had been, was unzipped. He hadn't left it open. Robert lunged forward, heart pounding, and unzipped it fully. The stone was still there, cold, heavy, smooth as bone, but now it felt colder, almost wet to the touch. He pulled his hand away quickly, the surface of the stone having left a faint sheen on his fingertips, like oil or sweat. A rustle from outside, then another thud. Then, stillness. Robert zipped the pack shut and turned off the light. Maybe if he didn't make a sound, whatever was out there, if anything was out there, would go away. Wouldn't see him. Would lose interest. He lay back again, heart hammering, every muscle tense. And then, just as his breathing began to steady, the whispers returned. This time louder, clearer words. Not English, not any language he recognized. They came in slow bursts, guttural and deep, circling the tent like chanting from unseen throats. The sound rose, crested, then dropped away into nothingness. Robert didn't sleep. By dawn, the sounds were gone, and only the wind remained. When he finally dared to unzip the flap and crawl out, the clearing looked unchanged. Almost. The fire had died out during the night, but not naturally. The embers were still warm, but the logs had been pulled apart, scattered like some animal, or someone, had disturbed them. And at the very edge of the clearing, just beyond where his firelight had reached the night before, something new waited. A footprint. Human-shaped, small, almost dainty, but pointing the wrong way, the heel toward the woods, the toes pointing toward his tent. The footprint hadn't been there the night before. Of that Robert was certain, because it was his own. He crouched beside the print in the dirt, staring. It was unmistakable. The size, the worn sole pattern, the scuff on the left edge. It matched his hiking boots exactly. But there was no way in hell he had walked out there, not in the middle of the night. Not barefoot, not backwards. The toes were still pointed toward his tent, like he'd been approaching himself in his sleep. He swallowed the bile rising in his throat. His heart pounded with that terrible pressure you feel when your sense of reality begins to warp and buckle. Robert had always prided himself on being rational, measured. He didn't scare easily, but this was different. He looked back toward the tent, half expecting to see some version of himself standing there, grinning. Instead, the clearing was empty, normal. Morning light filtered through the trees, birds chirped, squirrels scurried through underbrush. The forests, silent and ominous the night before, now looked like the cover of a weekend hiking magazine, and that made it worse. It shouldn't feel this normal. He kicked a bit of dirt over the footprint, not to hide it, but to erase it from his line of sight, like you'd close a mirror that suddenly reflected something it shouldn't. With stiff movements, he broke camp, folded his tent, packed his gear, doused the fire pit. Each action came with nervous urgency. His original plan had been to hike deeper into the trail system toward Devil's Hollow, a ravine rumored to have natural springs and eerie rock formations. But now, he wasn't sure anymore. And yet, leaving felt like losing, like giving into fear before understanding it. He pulled out the folded park map from his jacket pocket, tracing the red dotted trail that led south through the pine belt. If he pushed through today, he could reach the old ranger station ruins by dusk. That area was marked with a faded icon in the name, Witch's Rest. Local folklore, he remembered. Something about 1,800 settler executions. Superstition? A place the Historical Society refused to mark clearly. Perfect. Still, something in his chest pulled him onward. He hoisted the pack and walked. The day passed strangely. The trail was well worn but eerily quiet. He passed no other hikers, though the park registry at the trailhead had noted 2 other groups signed in ahead of him. No footprints, no litter, not even distant voices. Even the forest noises faded the deeper he went. No birds, no wind. The trees grew denser, taller, and more ancient. Pine trunks blackened with age stretched high above, blotting out most of the sunlight. The ground was soft and damp, giving way underfoot like a wet sponge. Moss covered everything. Even the stones had gone quiet. Around noon, he spotted something unusual. Another footprint, just one. It wasn't his. Smaller, barefoot, deep, like someone had pressed it into the earth with force. And next to it, a piece of red string tied around a root. No, not string, yarn. It fluttered slightly, though there was no wind. Robert stared, unmoving, as a cold shiver crawled up his spine. What kind of hiker leaves yarn in the middle of the woods? He knelt, inspecting it. The yarn was frayed but fresh, bright crimson, standing out against the forest floor. A child's toy? A marker? He didn't know, but something about it felt deliberate. He scanned the surrounding trees. Nothing moved, but the stillness was watching. Around mid-afternoon, Robert reached a clearing marked on the map as an old Forest Service site. At its center stood the remains of the ranger cabin, a crumbling wood foundation with the chimney still intact. Moss crawled over the stones. Vines snaked through what had once been windows. He approached, cautious. This place wasn't on any modern trail brochure. He'd found it only through a hiker's forum post buried deep in an online thread titled "Places the Park Rangers Don't Talk About." Inside the foundation, scattered remnants remained. Shattered ceramic, rusted lantern hooks, the cracked spine of a field journal. Robert stepped carefully, his boots crunching on dirt and ash. Then he saw it, on the far wall, scrawled in charcoal or something darker. "They follow where the stone goes." He froze. The words pulsed with menace. He looked down at his pack, where the black triangular stone still sat zipped tight inside a side pocket. Was it connected? Had someone else brought one here before? His thoughts were cut short by a sound, a low humming, like a voice held just beneath the range of hearing. He stood still. It was coming from the trees, faint, uneven. Human? Animal? Or neither? He turned slowly and scanned the forest wall. That's when he saw her. Or thought he did. Just beyond the edge of shadow, between 2 tree trunks, a figure stood, pale, unmoving, dressed in something long, old-fashioned. Her head tilted slightly, as if she were listening, or staring, or waiting. Robert didn't breathe. He blinked, and she was gone. No sound of movement, no crack of twigs, just gone. He backed toward the ruin, pulse racing. The stone in his pack seemed to grow heavier with each step. The air felt thicker, charged. And then, from deep in the woods, a voice spoke. Not loud, not whispered, but right there behind him. "You shouldn't have taken it." He spun. No one, just trees, moss, silence. He left the ruin without looking back. As Robert stumbled back onto the trail, heart pounding, a realization struck him like a blade to the chest. His own voice, that voice he'd just heard, it hadn't come from outside. It had come from inside his head. The trail should have led southeast, down toward Widow's Creek. But after 10 minutes of walking, Robert realized something deeply wrong. He was circling. He'd passed the same dead spruce stump 3 times. He'd marked it with a scratch the first time. Now there were 3. The woods were playing tricks on him. Or worse, something in the woods knew he was there. He stopped walking, chest heaving, sweat trickling, even though the air had turned bitter cold. His GPS unit blinked a dim red. No satellite signal, no cell service. He turned slowly, eyes combing the trees for anything, anyone. "Okay," he muttered to himself. "This is fine, stay calm. Backtrack to the cabin ruins, reorient. You're not lost." He turned left and found himself staring at a tree he didn't remember. Not just a tree, a pine. Unnaturally tall, bark split open like it had been struck by lightning, but still living. The bark near the roots was carved, deep gouges forming a crude shape, not words, but an image. A triangle, sharp, exact, just like the stone. He stepped back, branches rustled above. A cold breeze swept the forest, but not from any direction he could pinpoint. It pressed in from all sides, his breath fogged. And in that moment, he felt it. Something behind him, close, watching. He didn't turn. He couldn't. Instead, he whispered, "What do you want?" A whisper answered, threading through the air like smoke. "Return what you took." He whirled around. Nothing. But the moment he did, a searing pain shot through his temple. He dropped to his knees, clutching his skull as images flashed across his mind like lightning slashes. A woman with hollow eyes standing ankle-deep in fog. A circle of men around a stone altar, chanting. A child, mouth sewn shut, eyes pleading. The stone glowing faint red, pulsing like a heart. Then, darkness. When Robert came to, the sun had dipped low, casting long orange streaks through the trees. He sat up, groggy. Dirt clung to his jacket. A trail of blood crusted at his nose. His pack had been moved. No, rifled through. He scrambled to check. The stone was gone. Panic surged. He dumped the contents of the pack, hands shaking. Nothing. He stood, spinning. No. He didn't even know why it mattered so much, but something primal in him screamed. It should never be taken. Not by him. Not by anyone else. His eyes caught something ahead. Not 20 feet from where he'd collapsed, the stone lay in a shallow patch of moss. Placed there. Offered. He moved toward it cautiously. The moment he stepped within reach, a shadow darted behind the trees. Too fast to track. He froze. "Who's there?" he called. Silence. Then a laugh. Soft, feminine, echoing unnaturally. Robert bent down, took the stone, and the laughter stopped instantly, and then the forest shifted. Not physically, but in atmosphere. What had been woods became domain. The trees didn't look like trees anymore. Their branches curled toward him like arms. Shadows moved against light instead of away from it. He realized with a sharp stab of terror. He had stepped into the circle. Not a physical one, a ritual one. The kind that doesn't need markings, only intent. As twilight fell, he finally stumbled out onto a gravel clearing. A weathered wooden sign creaked in the wind. Widow's Creek, 1831, no camping beyond this point. Beyond the sign was an old covered bridge, long and sagging with age, its white paint peeled and streaked with moss. The creek below hissed over rocks, fast and shallow, but what caught Robert's eye wasn't the bridge, it was the structure beyond it. A white farmhouse, 2 stories tall, its front porch leaning shutters half-hanging. One of the windows flickered with candlelight. He stood frozen, thoughts warring. Go back into the woods? Or forward into that? The candlelight in the window flickered again, this time revealing the silhouette of someone watching. Then the porch light turned on. An old man stepped out. Bent, bearded, leaning on a cane. He raised one hand. "Come on in, son, before it gets dark. You look like hell." Robert hesitated. "Who are you?" he called. The man didn't answer, only turned and hobbled back inside. Inside the house was warmer than expected. Not cozy, just less wrong than the forest. The man, who introduced himself as Silas Mathers, handed Robert a tin mug of something dark and herbal. "You touched it, didn't you?" he asked, eyes not quite meeting Robert's. Robert nodded slowly. "The black stone, the triangle. You took it from the grave." Robert blinked. "You know about it?" "I buried it," Silas said quietly. There was a long silence. Then, "You're not the first." That phrase sent a chill through Robert deeper than the cold wind outside. Silas limped to a dusty cabinet, pulled out a leather-bound book. He opened it to the middle. Handwritten pages, faded ink, drawings of symbols, dates, and names. Dozens. Some were crossed out, some were circled. One of the last ones. R. Francis. Robert's mouth went dry. How? How do you know my name?" Silas looked at him, finally meeting his eyes. "You were always going to come here, son." Robert flipped the next page of Silas's book and saw something that made his blood stop cold. A sketch, a man kneeling in the woods, a stone in his hand, and behind him, drawn in jagged ink, was a figure with no face, draped in black, arms outstretched. The caption beneath it read, "The one who calls the dead." In the middle of the night, Robert awoke to the sound of someone calling his name, except the voice was his own. He bolted upright, heart hammering. The old house was silent except for the soft ticking of a warped grandfather clock down the hall. The voice was gone, but it had sounded exactly like him. Same pitch, same hesitation, same crack in the throat. He waited, held his breath, listened. Nothing. But something felt wrong, not just with the voice, with the air. The warmth of the old farmhouse had vanished, the temperature had dropped, and the windows were fogged over. From the foot of the bed, he saw it, a smear, a handprint, on the inside of the glass. He got up, slowly. The hallway was darker than it should have been. As if the shadows soaked up what little light his flashlight cast, he moved past old picture frames, their contents water-damaged and warped, faces smudged, details gone. One photo stopped him. It was a family portrait, maybe 1930s. A mother, 2 children, and a man in a sheriff's uniform. Only their eyes had been scratched out. He turned it over. Scribbled in faded pencil on the back, "Those who speak the names are never heard from again." Silas was awake, in the kitchen, sitting by the cold fireplace with the book still in his lap, flipping pages by candlelight. He didn't look up when Robert entered. "You saw it?" the old man said. "The echo." Robert hesitated. "I heard my voice, but I didn't speak." Silas nodded grimly. "That's how it begins. You hear yourself, then you see yourself, then you become something else." He looked up, eyes bloodshot. "You've been marked, son. You might not believe in all this now, but you will. The Hollow doesn't care what you believe. It only cares what you've done." Robert sat across from him. "You keep saying I'm not the first. What does that mean? What is this thing? What is the Hollow?" Silas didn't answer directly. Instead, he pulled out a second book, thinner, handwritten in more recent ink. He opened to a page and laid it flat. A map of the forest, specific trees marked, a circle drawn, and in the middle, a single word, Threnody. Robert frowned. "Is that a town?" Silas shook his head. "It was. Before the war, before the pines grew tall enough to bury it." He jabbed the center with a bony finger. "You brought the stone out of the circle. That was a seal, boy, not a grave. That stone wasn't to honor the dead, it was to keep them silent." Silas's story came out in broken fragments, like confessions soaked in whiskey and guilt. Threnody, West Virginia, a mining settlement turned isolationist commune around 1860, founded by a preacher named Alden Crane, who believed the land itself whispered to him, that the hills were alive with the tongues of the forgotten. He and his followers built a church without doors, carved into a ravine. They prayed in silence, cut out songs, cut out names. They called themselves the Unspoken. When outsiders came looking in 1869, after 2 surveyors disappeared, the town was gone, burned flat. The only thing left was a pine grove where the church had been, and a stone marked with a triangle. After that, Silas said hoarsely, the stories started. Hikers hearing their own voices calling from the trees. People disappearing without a trace. And always the mark, the triangle. Like it's watching. Robert looked at the book again. You said I'm not the first. What happened to the others? Silas closed his eyes. They started changing. First the voice, then the eyes, then the memories, until what came back wasn't them anymore. Robert spent the rest of the morning flipping through the books, documenting every name, every symbol, every half-legible page. He needed to understand, needed to believe that knowledge could fight back the dark. That afternoon he ventured out to Widow's Creek Bridge again. The stone still pulsed faintly in his pocket, never warm, but not cold either, as if it remembered being part of something larger, something alive. He walked past the bridge and down the overgrown trail Silas had marked. It took him into a gorge, flanked by sloping ridges and twisted trees. As the path narrowed, a strange quiet fell over the woods. Not just the absence of sound, an oppression. Robert stepped through a break in the brush and found himself facing what remained of the Church of the Unspoken. It wasn't a building, it was a void. A black pit in the ground, lined with collapsed timbers and stone altars, half swallowed by the earth. Strange carvings dotted the exposed walls, not English, not even Latin. He stepped closer, his breath fogged despite the sun, and then a whisper, low, familiar, his own voice repeating, "You should not have come here." He spun nothing, no one. But when he looked back at the pit, there was now a figure standing at its edge. Him, or rather, something that looked like him. Skin too pale, mouth slightly open, no whites in the eyes, like a mannequin mimicking life. Then it smiled. Robert froze. The reflection, his other self, stood perfectly still, half shrouded by the veil of shadows around the pit. It didn't blink, didn't breathe. Yet somehow it felt more real than he did. He took a cautious step forward. The figure mirrored him. Another step. It did the same. Robert's hand slipped into his coat pocket, fingers wrapping tightly around the smooth, jagged edge of the stone. The moment he touched it, the figure's head twitched, just a fraction, then tilted unnaturally to one side. And then it spoke. Robert Francis. His heart almost stopped. The voice wasn't just his own. It was his thoughts spoken aloud. The cadence, the phrasing, like something had torn the words straight from his mind. You dream of being remembered, it said, stepping closer to the edge of the pit. But all your memories will be hollow. Robert stumbled backward, nearly slipping on a moss-covered root. The air thickened around him, heavy as if the forest itself held its breath. That's when the figure moved. Fast, too fast, lunging toward him with no sound, no footfall, just presence. Instinct took over. Robert turned and ran. He burst from the ravine like prey flushed from a trap. Branches clawed at his face, thorns sliced at his arms. But he didn't stop until he reached the bridge, until the trees thinned enough for the sun to find him again. He collapsed onto the dirt path, lungs burning. It didn't follow, but he knew it had seen him. He wasn't just a witness anymore. He was now part of it. That night, back at Silas's house, Robert didn't speak much. The old man took one look at his face and poured 2 fingers of whiskey without asking. You saw your hollow, Silas said. Robert nodded slowly. What the hell is it? Silas rubbed his temple. They call it the echo-made flesh. The Unspoken believed every soul leaves behind a residue, a name-shaped void. And if something else speaks your name in the right place, under the right moon, He trailed off. Robert leaned forward. What happens? Silas looked up, eyes sunken. Then the name gets up, walks, looks for you, because it believes you're the echo. It wants its shape back. Robert shivered. You mean it thinks I'm not real? Silas didn't answer. Determined to find answers, Robert returned to the ravine the next morning, this time with rope, gloves, and a flashlight. The pit was dry but steep, maybe 15 feet deep, with slick moss on the rocks. He anchored the rope to a cedar and descended. At the bottom, the air was colder than before. The moment his boots hit the floor, his flashlight flickered. And then came the chanting. Not loud, not external, but inside his ears. A dozen voices, low, atonal, repeating a phrase in a dead language. It rattled something in his spine. The light steadied. He scanned the space. Half-rotted wooden pews, collapsed beams, strange bone sculptures embedded in the stone. At the far end of the pit stood a tall wooden frame, like an altar. Runes had been carved into the wood, and beneath them was a row of names, scrawled, blackened, almost burned in. He leaned closer. Most had been scratched out violently, all except the last. R. Francis Lagus. The ink was still wet. He staggered back, hands trembling. That's when he saw it. An object partially buried beneath a broken bench. He knelt and pried it free. A leather-bound notebook, damp but intact. The name on the inside cover, June Keller. Thrinity Historical Society. Back at Silas's, Robert and the old man dried the book by the fire. The entries were written in tidy cursive, dated from 1986. June had been a researcher cataloging ghost towns in Appalachia. Her last location listed was Thrinity. The last entry read, "Something is wrong here. The air doesn't move. My thoughts feel foreign. The boy I met yesterday, he looks like my brother, but I never had one. I keep dreaming I'm buried under pine needles and everyone's speaking in my voice. I need to leave tomorrow." There was no date on that page, just a smear. Robert turned to Silas. "What happened to her?" Silas frowned. "No one ever found her. They say sometimes hikers stumble onto her camp, still set up, firewood stacked, but no one's seen her in decades." Robert opened the final page. Someone had scrawled a word across it in charcoal back ink. Unnamed. That night, he dreamed of the pit. Except this time, he was buried in it. The walls closed in, covered with mirrors. In each reflection, his own face, or almost. They whispered his name in unison, over and over, until it no longer sounded human. The ground beneath him pulsed with the beat of his heart, and from the ceiling, thin black vines dangled down, each one ending in a mouth. One of them whispered, "Trade places." He awoke, drenched in sweat. But not alone. There was mud on the floor, bare footprints, leading away from the bed. The door creaked open on its own, revealing a house where every photograph had Robert's face, and none of them were him. June Keller's house stood at the edge of Trinity's forgotten boundary, past the cemetery, nestled against the tree line like it was afraid of being remembered. The foundation had sagged, windows clouded with mildew and time, roof patched in places with old election signs and rusted tin. Yet despite the rot, the front porch was freshly swept, and a candle burned in the window, steady and unwelcome. Robert stood at the gate, Silas's truck engine fading behind him. He hesitated, the notebook clutched in his gloved hand. Inside the pages, June's final scrawls had led him here. "If I forget my name, this house will remember." He pushed the gate. It squealed open with a sound like protest. Crows scattered from the fence post as he climbed the steps. The door wasn't locked. It never had been. Inside was silence, but not the kind of silence that felt empty. This one was listening. The living room had the musty, stale chill of a space untouched by heat or life for years, yet someone, or something, had preserved it. Books lined the shelves alphabetically, a shawl draped neatly over the armrest of a chair by the cold fireplace, and the photographs. They were everywhere, on the mantle, the walls, the stairwell. At first glance, they were old family portraits. Couples in sepia tone, children playing in fall leaves, a woman smiling beside a fieldstone wall. But the faces, Robert leaned in, they all looked like him, or at least some version of him, a cousin, a twin, a distorted memory trying to wear his skin. His stomach turned. He moved deeper into the house, the floorboards groaning in odd rhythms behind each step. The kitchen table was still set, 2 plates, both untouched, both mirroring each other perfectly, like someone was dining with their reflection. The pantry door stood ajar. Inside wasn't food. It was a closet full of Polaroids, strung from fishing line like laundry. Hundreds of them. Same house, same furniture, but in each one, a different Robert caught mid-mashing. Some smiling, some terrified, some blurry as if running. In one, the version of him stood in this exact kitchen, mouth open, hand reaching forward, like he'd just realized he was being watched. Robert backed away. In the hallway, he found the first ritual mark, drawn in chalk, half faded, a symbol resembling an open eye with its pupil scratched out. Beneath it, smeared in something dry and brown, were the words, "You are the name. The name is not you." He touched it lightly. The air buzzed. From upstairs came a sound, a chair scraping across wood. He froze. Then, footsteps, slow, deliberate. He climbed the stairs with breath held. The second floor was darker, the windows sealed shut. At the end of the hall stood a door slightly open. Behind it, he heard breathing. Not heavy, just steady, patient. He pushed the door open. June Keller's bedroom. Everything inside was untouched. A diary lay on the nightstand, its leather cracked and curling. The bed was made, but what caught Robert's attention was the mirror above the dresser. In the mirror, June Keller sat upright on the bed, but the bed was empty. Her reflection smiled, and then, without moving her lips, she spoke. "Do you know your name, Robert?" He staggered back, his hand brushed the diary. Desperate for grounding, he grabbed it and flipped pages. Entries flickered between lucid research and madness. The ritual requires 3 things: the hollow stone, the mirrored soul, and the place that forgets time. Names rot if spoken too often. That's how the echo gets in. I dreamed I was someone else, woke up to a mirror where I should be, then a sketch, a map, the layout of Threnody. At the center, the church pit, but to the south, another marking, the shifting house. Robert frowned. That name, it wasn't on any town record. Just as he looked up, the mirror cracked. Not from impact, from inside. He fled the room. Behind him, June's voice whispered from every closed door, "You wore the name too long. He's ready to come through." Mirror. Back in the living room, the candle in the window had gone out. The photos had changed. In every frame, his eyes were black. He turned to the door, ready to leave. But there, on the doormat, sat a package, wrapped in butcher's paper. No note. Inside was a cassette tape and an old portable recorder. The label simply read, "Listen before the house remembers too much." The recorder clicked softly in Robert's hand, its weight colder than it should have been. He knelt by the hearth, thumb trembling over the play button. A thought struck him. This could be a prank or a leftover tape from June's ramblings, but when the recording began, it was his voice. "If you're hearing this, it means you've come too far. The ritual's begun, even if you didn't mean to. The moment you touched the stone," Robert's jaw clenched. He'd never recorded anything like this. The voice on the tape was his in tone, but not in intent. It sounded tired, hollow, like someone reciting something learned too well. June was right. There is no him, only the name that forgets, and now it remembers you. There was static. Then the sound of chanting, not in English. Low, wet syllables that sounded like they were being pulled from the floorboards themselves. And under that, scratching, like nails on wood or something trying to carve its way out. Then came the phrase, "To break the loop, you must unname yourself." The tape whined. 3 steps, 3 places, 3 offerings. The hollow one must be mirrored, then buried. But hurry, Robert. You've already taken his place once. He'll want it back soon. The tape stopped. He sat still for a long time. The house creaked softly, shifting like it was breathing. Wind howled outside, though none of the windows had opened. Robert slowly rewound the tape, replayed the line. "You've already taken his place once." What did that mean? What place? He stood, unsure if his legs would obey. In the hallway mirror, his reflection lagged behind. Just a flicker, just enough. The house knew. And worse, it remembered too much. He pulled the notebook from his coat pocket and flipped to the last page. June had drawn a triangle of places on the map. The old church at the north edge, the sunken cemetery by the lake, and a third spot deep in the woods labeled only Shifting House. He tore the map out, stuffed it into his coat, and walked to the front door. But it no longer opened. Not jammed, sealed, as though the house itself had shifted around him. Robert turned back and saw something new above the fireplace. Another photograph, still sepia, still weathered. Only this one was different. It was him, all right, but the version in the photo had no eyes, just empty sockets and a faint smile. The nameplate beneath read, "Francis Keller, B. 1943, vanished 1977. Francis Keller." His grandfather's name. His pulse thundered in his ears. He'd grown up never knowing much about his mother's side. Keller was a name spoken rarely, and always with tension. So why did this ghost house think he was Francis? Why had it been calling to him before he ever stepped foot in Threnody? A whisper filled the air. June's voice again. "You wore it. You kept it safe. But names rot when held too long." Suddenly the room went dark. The candle relit. The couch cracked, its cushions split. A shape began rising from inside the fabric, like the room had grown an ulcer, and it was pushing something diseased to the surface. He backed away, but the house shifted. Floorboards buckled behind him, steering him to the mirror over the mantel. In it, he saw the hollow one. It looked like him, exactly. But there was nothing behind the eyes, just a void. Something wearing his shape, breathing through his lungs, waiting to step out the other side of the glass. It whispered, "Give it back. Give the name back." Robert hurled the recorder at the mirror. It shattered, but the reflection didn't vanish. It smiled, and then, without sound, the mirror swallowed the broken glass. Healing like skin, he fled upstairs back to June's room. The diary was still there, but now a new page was open. It wasn't blank. It had his handwriting. Place 1, burn the borrowed face in the church mirror. Place 2, drown the name in the lake grave. Place 3, find the true house, the one that moves when you remember it. He heard footsteps again, coming up the stairs, but they weren't his. He darted out the side window under the roof, landing hard on rotting shingles, shimmied down the lattice. His coat snagged, tore, didn't stop. He ran down the hill, lungs burning, lungs screaming, until he reached the tree line. Only then did he stop and turn back. June's house was gone. Not burnt, not collapsed, just vanished, like it had never been there. They say if you speak your own name in the mirror of Alder Chapel, the face that answers isn't always yours. The wind shrieked through the trees as Robert approached old Alder Chapel. Once a proud little building nestled on a hillside just north of Threnody, the chapel now stood like a cadaver posed for viewing. Walls buckled, roof partially collapsed, the steeple cracked and crooked like a broken finger pointing toward a sky that no longer cared. Its doors had long been swallowed by ivy, but as Robert stepped closer, they creaked open, on their own. He hesitated. Not from fear, from recognition. He had dreamed this building, more than once, And in every dream, there was always a mirror, a tall one, arched like a cathedral window, with the frame blackened by fire, standing right behind the pulpit. The air inside the chapel smelled of rot and rusted metal, not blood, but close enough. The floor groaned beneath him. Dust rose like ash. Every pew was split down the middle, like something had burst up from below. And at the far end, lit by the fading gray daylight streaming through broken stained glass, stood the mirror. Just as he'd remembered it, 7 feet tall, frame carved with worn Latin inscriptions. He approached. The first thing he noticed, his reflection blinked out of sync. It watched him, waited. He pulled the notebook from his coat and read June's scrawl again. Place 1, burn the borrowed face in the church mirror. But what did that mean? He stared into the glass. His reflection mimicked him now, more or less, but the eyes were wrong, too still, too calm. He took a step closer, pulled a lighter from his pocket. Its flame flickered, but wouldn't go out. He touched the flame to the edge of the mirror. Nothing. Name it? A voice rasped behind him. Robert spun. Nothing. The chapel was empty, yet no longer silent. Something moved above, between broken rafters. Something too large for the crawl space. Name it, the voice said again. Or it names you. Robert faced the mirror. He said it aloud. Robert Francis Keller. The mirror rippled. The reflection smiled, and then, slowly, changed. The face warped, shifting bone structure. His eyes sank deeper into their sockets, skin paling into ash. Hair turning thin, wet, stringy, a smile carved wider than possible. And yet, it still looked like him, just peeled. He stepped back. The reflection did not. It stepped forward, out of sync, and pressed its hands against the inside of the glass. The mirror fogged beneath its fingers, and then it began mouthing something silently. He couldn't hear the words, but he felt them. He traced his spine, in his teeth, in the part of him that dreamt of drowning while awake. He grabbed the flask from his coat, a bottle of rubbing alcohol he'd brought just in case, poured it over the base of the mirror. The reflection cocked its head, confused. Or amused. Robert struck a match. The fire hissed up in a sudden burst, running up the mirror's edge like veins catching flame, but the glass did not crack. It breathed in the fire, and the reflection burned. But not like glass distorting, like skin. The thing screamed. A noise only Robert could hear. Inside his head, it clutched its throat, melted, smiled wider, and then it spoke back, not from the mirror, from behind him. Robert, it whispered, you gave me your face once before. You'll do it again. He spun, saw no one, turned back to the mirror, and it was blank. No reflection, no glass, just an open void like a doorway made of obsidian. And in that darkness, a shape began forming. A figure. It stepped forward, just a silhouette, but in its outline was everything Robert feared about himself. Cowardice, guilt, rage, loss. All of it given eyes. He backed away, heart pounding. The chapel groaned, floorboards cracked, the air turned electric, metallic, sharp, the scent of burning hair. And then, a single knock. From the mirror, from the inside. He turned and fled down the center aisle, but the pews shifted, rearranged themselves, blocking his path, splitting open like jaws. He leapt over a half-rotted bench and slammed through the side door, tumbling into the grass outside, choking on smoke that wasn't real. From the hilltop, the chapel now glowed faintly, and in the upper window of the broken steeple, a face. Not his, but wearing his skin. Watching, smiling. The lake didn't appear on any map. Robert had checked. Twice. Locals called it Gravemaker's Hollow, a sinkhole turned wetland left behind after a mine collapsed back in 1919. The water looked shallow, barely up to the knee. but people drowned here, still, regularly. No one ever found bodies. He parked the truck just before the old iron fence that marked the edge of the property. The air was thick with late summer rot, algae, stagnant water, and something sharper, like mildewed meat. A wooden sign, faded and broken in half, leaned against a post. Ryer Cemetery, Est 1864. Consecrated ground. Do not trespass after dusk. Dusk had already passed. He stepped over twisted brush, following the remnants of a path carved between sunken gravestones. Some were nearly submerged, others leaned at impossible angles, half swallowed by moss. And then he found it, just as June described, a tombstone, wide and squat, set into a concrete platform that jutted slightly above the waterline. No name, just a symbol carved in the center, a circle of thorns broken at the top. Beneath it, almost buried in reeds, was a box. Black wood, iron latch, damp but intact. Inside was a single item, a glass jar filled with ink-black water. Floating inside was a soaked scrap of paper with a name. His name. He recoiled instinctively, but he didn't drop the jar. The ink swirled, almost alive, and then cleared just enough to let him read the words scrawled beside his own. To drown what you are, and what you will become. He looked out toward the lake. It was mirror still, not a single ripple, and yet it felt like it was breathing. He waded in. The water was cold. Not icy, but heavy, thick like it carried weight, like it remembered. He reached the center, just beside a dead tree that jutted from the water like a broken rib. His breath steamed in the air, even though the night wasn't cold. He unscrewed the lid. The jar hissed. The surface of the lake tensed. Something beneath the water shifted. Something big. He forced himself not to look down. Instead, he poured. The ink-black water spilled into the lake. The slip of paper followed, curling as it sank. Then, stillness, until a ripple. Then another. Then a hand. Pale, bloated, twisted at the wrist. It reached up, not toward him, but toward the scrap of paper, now drifting lower. Another hand broke the surface. Then a shoulder. Then a face. And Robert gasped. It was his, but not from the mirror. This one was soaked, hair matted, lips blue, eyes rolled back. It stared at nothing, and yet it smiled. It opened its mouth. Black water spilled out, and from the darkness came a voice, not in words, but in intention. 2 steps taken, 1 remains, but you already know what waits at the 3rd. Robert tried to backpedal, but the mud grabbed his boots like hands. The drowned twin stepped closer. It didn't move through water. It glided. Its feet never broke the surface. It leaned forward until their foreheads almost touched, and whispered, "You won't be enough." Then it vanished, dissolving into the lake like smoke into wind. No splash. Just gone. Robert stumbled to shore, gasping. The name, his name, was gone, not just from the jar, from his mind. He couldn't recall it. He knew who he was, what he'd done, the path that brought him here. But the sound of his own name? Gone. Replaced by an ache behind his eyes and a sense that something old had taken its place. He pulled the notebook from his coat. June had written 3 steps. 1 burned, 1 drowned. The last? He turned the page and found new handwriting, ragged, cursive, not hers. It read, to complete the rite, bury the borrowed face, return to the stone, and chew. There was no signature, just a symbol. The circle of thorns again. Now complete. As Robert looked up, he saw movement by his truck. A figure stood beneath the pines, and it was smiling. It was waiting for him, not the stone, the thing that wore his smile. The forest greeted Robert with the same silence as the first night, but it wasn't the same forest anymore, not after what he had seen. Not after what he had become. The sun had set 2 hours ago. Fog curled between the trees like the fingers of some sleeping animal. Every step along the pine-carpeted trail was heavier, like the earth itself resisted his return. He carried nothing now. No backpack, no map, just the bundle, wrapped in flannel and tied with twine. Inside was a mask made of his own skin. Not literally, but close enough. A face that had been seen in mirrors, in water, in dreams. A version of himself carved by memory, grief, and something older than names. The path narrowed into the clearing. The moon hung pale and cracked overhead, and there it was, the mound of stones, just as he had first found it, except this time it breathed, not literally, but the air above it shifted like heat mirage, though the wind was cold. He stepped forward. With every crunch of gravel, his heartbeat slowed, not sped up, like a drug pulling him into numbness. He could feel the bundle vibrating in his hands, not physically, but in memory, like a memory being rewritten as it was lived. To complete the rite, bury the borrowed face, return to the stone, and choose. He knelt beside the mound. The flat rock, once just a marker, now pulsed faintly beneath his touch, as if something below had noticed. He untied the bundle. Inside was a simple, unremarkable mask, porcelain white, smooth, featureless, but in its blankness, he saw every version of himself. The coward, the boy who ran, the man who forgot. He dug into the soil with bare hands. The earth was soft, too soft, and wet. Each scoop came away dark and slick, like digging into compost soaked in blood. Then, stone, he hit something hard. Not a coffin, a face. It looked just like the mask in his hands, only older, cracked, worn down by centuries. He set his mask beside it. And the stone face opened its mouth, not literally, but in meaning. His thoughts slipped. He wasn't in the forest anymore. He stood in a field of black grass under a sky without stars. All around him were faces, some screaming, some blank, some begging, none moving, none real, just hung like lanterns from branches that had no trees. A voice rippled across the air. "You came back." It wasn't a question. The faces began to turn, not toward him, but toward the mask in his hand. "You brought it. You understood. You remembered. Then, now choose." He blinked, and the forest returned. The mound waited. The soil steamed gently in the cold night. The two masks lay side by side, his and the one beneath. What was the choice? What did it mean to bury the borrowed face? Which was the real one? Was it the one he wore, the one he drowned, the one he feared? He didn't know anymore, and that was the point. He lifted his own mask, held it over the hollow in the mound, and waited. Something below shifted. Hungry. He spoke, unsure where the words came from. "Let it be this one. Let this be the end of me." He dropped the mask into the earth. The mound closed around it like a mouth. The wind stopped. Even the insects fell silent. The world held its breath. And then he heard his own voice spoken back to him from beneath the earth. "Not enough." A second voice followed, layered over the first, deeper. "One remains." A shape rose from the mound. It wore his face, not the old one, the one he had never admitted existed, the cruel one, the one that had stood by and let others take the fall, the one that made him walk away the night Clara died, the one that whispered, "You're not to blame." It stepped forward and smiled. It held out its hand. In its palm was the black stone, still warm, still waiting. The stone pulsed in the hand of the thing wearing his face. Robert didn't reach for it. He couldn't move. His legs felt anchored in soil that was no longer just dirt. It was memory, guilt, regret hardened into earth. The thing stepped closer, its eyes studying him, not with malice, but something worse, familiarity. "I'm not a curse," It said, "I'm a promise." Its voice was his, minus mercy. The black stone in its palm gleamed as if it drank the moonlight, and then it turned and held the stone out to him, not in threat, in offering. "You came all this way to bury something," it said, "but you never asked what if the thing you buried wasn't the lie." Robert's mind swirled. He remembered the therapist's office, the half-confession, the police interview, the deliberate omission, Clara's last words, "You always disappear." He'd built his entire life on a mask of helplessness, but he had chosen to look away. He had chosen not to act. The night Clara vanished in the woods, he had heard her scream, and he had waited before going in, just long enough. "This isn't about the stone," the thing said, closing its fist around it, "is about what you'd rather forget. But I never left. I never will." The mound beside them shifted again, now forming a shape, a third mask. This one wasn't porcelain. It was flesh, stretched and leathery, with hollow eyes and a screaming mouth. Clara's face, or the memory of her. It pulsed in time with his heartbeat. The mound whispered, not aloud, but inside his teeth, his bones. "Wear it." Robert stumbled backward, shaking his head. "No," he whispered. "You want me to carry that? To become—" The thing stepped forward. "You already did. You left me down there with her." It held the stone up. Now it was glowing, not with light, but with recognition. "Take it, or I will—" One of us walks away. The forest around them bent, twisted. Irium trees bled sap that smelled like firewood and bile. The air thinned like a throat closing. The mound opened like a mouth, and time stopped. Robert dropped to his knees. He reached toward the glowing stone, and for a moment, he saw every version of himself standing in a circle around him. Dozens, hundreds, all with his face, frozen in different ages, clothes, regrets, all watching, waiting. The stone burned his palm. His skin blistered. Smoke hissed from his fingers. The mound screamed. The thing with his face lunged, mouth wide, arms outstretched, eyes empty of pupil or soul. Robert shouted, "I remember her. I never stopped." The forest exploded with silence, like sound had been sucked into the ground. And then, the thing dissolved into ash. The masks melted. The stone cracked in half, spilling black dust into the earth. Robert collapsed. The air returned. The forest settled, but something was different. His hand still burned, even though the stone was gone. And then he looked down and saw the mark. A small, circular brand. Not a scar, not skin. A stone embedded in his palm. No longer black, but clear, like quartz. Inside it, a single closed eye. He didn't scream, he just laughed. A quiet, broken sound. The moon dipped behind the trees. Dawn was approaching. Robert stood. The mound was flat now, the faces were gone. The earth no longer whispered, but deep inside him, something had taken root. Not evil, not possession, witness. He walked back the way he came, the forest gently parting before him. Every few steps he felt the stone in his hand pulse, not painfully, just there, like a second heartbeat. When he reached the edge of the woods, his phone buzzed for the first time in days. Unknown number. He answered without thinking. Silence. Then, "You walked away once, you won't get to again." Click. The line went dead. The phone screen cracked on its own, spidering across like veins. The sky above him darkened again. It was morning, but no sun rose. In the reflection of his cracked phone screen, he no longer saw his face. Only the empty mask, waiting to be worn again. Thank you for staying with me through every chilling step of this journey. If you made it this far, maybe you felt what I felt, that creeping sense that some truths don't belong in daylight. And some roads were never meant to be walked twice. Whether you're here because you love horror, folklore, or just can't look away from the dark, I appreciate your time, your courage, and your curiosity. If the story left you unsettled, good. That means it worked. And if you're still wondering whether Robert ever really left those woods, so am I.